You know, I actually wrote my speech last night. Leanne turned up and I said, I have a heap of work to do, but I still haven't written what I want to write and say for tomorrow. But here's the thing about me. Like Hassan, I'm actually an introvert. I am shy. But there's something else that drives me, just like it drives you. It's knowing what you want. And for me, that's actually creating the impact that I want out into the world. So yes, I did write it. And I actually read it this morning. But I'm going to throw it out. Because for me, it's actually about being present. You see, when we cross paths, it's actually about pausing to better understand. Now, Stacey actually said to me earlier when I said, I really look forward to actually better understanding you. And she said, oh, no, not me. And I said, no, you don't understand. I do. Pausing in the moment at any given time is what life is about. So, today, in 18 months' time from today, it's going to be Friday, the 7th of April, 2024. So here's my question to you. Where will you be? What will you have achieved? You know, you're all sitting here today and you have had some extraordinary stories shared with you. You've had some incredible messages, tools, tips shared by experts. So have you taken the opportunity to make notes? If you haven't, because you don't have a piece of paper, I have a journal that I wrote in 10 days. And just so that you know, my background is actually finance. So I'm a numbers person. So that actual, I guess, story that we're sold about people that know numbers don't really write, or if you're a writer, you don't know numbers, that's actually a story that somebody's selling you. So be cautious about what it is that you're actually prepared to absorb and to take on board. Now, I'm actually saying to you, my speech is nothing of what I wrote, and I'm being genuine because for me, it's being real. There is nothing that I'm actually telling you that I have made up. It's actually what I'm feeling from what I've experienced today. So, Kath actually shared a really interesting story about the connections. You know, in Ireland, I actually said to Karen, who's not here but here, I see circles. Circles are actually about connections. And for me, those connections are actually opportunities. So my book, it's funny. My book was actually written in a moment of crisis. What was my crisis? Well, it was Friday the 13th of March. And guess which March? It was the March that we were actually going into the pandemic. I was flying back from Perth. I had actually just finished speaking nationally. And the pandemic started to hit, and I was wondering what was going on because toilet paper was disappearing. There was a whole lot of stuff, you know? You remember that? Like, I got off the plane, I'm thinking, what is going on? What's the joke that I'm missing? Well, did I know that 4 days later I would actually be getting a phone call to say that I needed to actually travel 2 hours to go to hospital because my mother was sitting with a counsellor. Why? Because my father had a fall in hospital that led to a brain bleed. You know, in that moment, you really don't know what's ahead of you. And this is what I want each of you to take away from today. I asked you that question specifically. Where will you be on the 7th of April 2024? Because that's how you start to create that roadmap. If you don't know the reasons that you're actually sitting in this room and the intention that you actually want from today to get you to where you want to be, then how are you going to get there? If all of these messages that have been shared with you aren't actually absorbed to actually create what's going to be right for you, you're going to get there and then go back and go, what did Cathy say again? Oh my God, I wish I had actually started that strategy straight after the ABLE conference. So be intentional, be conscious, combine them together, because that's how you create impact. So as my father actually was lying in that hospital, my mother and I on the Saturday, actually it was on the Friday, we turned up into the car park and my mother had a heart attack in the car. I had to get the doctors and the staff out into the car park, and of course they didn't have a cardiac team at that hospital. So she had to be sent to an ambulance at a different hospital. Now in that moment, I sat there and I thought, this is my choice, this is my chance to be more and to do more. So, birthed was same people, different vision. And that's what I want for you guys today. Be who you are. Just change the lens in which you're seeing things, in the way that you're feeling things. Have comfort in who you are. You don't need to be anybody else. Be you. I'm a big believer of not doing things the traditional way, hence throwing out my speech. And yes, Kath talked about going against the grain. If we are to lead our future generation, we need to enable them to do things their way, not to do things that we have done. What's the point in that? They're going to get to where we are today. So let's encourage them. Hassan actually talked about failure. I celebrate it. Why? Because they actually dared to do something different. How are we going to get innovation if we do not do something different? Isn't that called insanity? Doing the same thing and expecting something different? As business owners, let me tell you, I have actually worked with thousands of business owners across the world, from small business to big business. And here's the thing. We know our stuff. It's our business after all. We've got the solutions. But do we have the solutions that are actually going to give us the best outcome? Perhaps not. And that's where we have a slight downfall, because we're not prepared to ask, right? Ask for help. Ask the questions. The worst thing that anybody can say is, I don't know, or I don't have the time, but they're not saying no to you. So dare to ask. If you want to honestly succeed, then be prepared to actually get somebody to help you. When I first started my career, I actually attended a course, and it was Writing for Lawyers. I took away some tips, and I'm going to share 3 of them with you today. The first is, keep things simple. The second thing is, when you are writing or when you are speaking, speak as if you are talking to a 13-year-old. Why? It's not to demean them, but it is to make sure that the message that you actually want to land for them so that they better understand what you're saying is actually going to resonate, and they're not going to be sitting there thinking, what did she say? What did she mean by that? And the third thing is, well, you need to show people. I talk about redundancy. Most people actually fear it. Why? Because they're not going to keep lining their pockets. Well, my job is to actually teach you, show you everything that I actually know so that I can move on to somebody else who really wants to make a change, who wants to change their trajectory. So keep things simple, guys. We don't have to use complicated words. Just be real. So today, each of you, Kath Malloy, shared something really valuable. Connections are real. We were asked to go and meet 3 people. Do you know who those 3 people are? It only happened, 20 minutes ago. How many of you remember? How many of you remember those 3 names? So there it is. Intention and being conscious. When you are intentionally conscious, you create impact, guys. So for me, I've thrown out my story, but I'm going to share with you a story that one of my clients, and it's not in my book, My book does actually have lots of situations where they are relatable because they've come from lived experiences. But here's the story today. I have a client who was a lawyer, is still a lawyer. The business isn't a law firm. She reached out because somebody suggested that she speak to me. She doesn't know them, and I actually don't know them. When she came to me, she was what she called in crisis. The business was growing, but she didn't have anything in place. So I helped her to grow that business from 6 people to 68, turning over $5 million in 12 months. Tomorrow, when you turn up, I'll tell you what we did in the next 6 months. So when you know what it is that you want to do, you can actually create that roadmap. So today, are you ready? Write down where you're going to be. 7th of April, 2024. What will you have achieved? Write it down, share it with me. I'm Cathy Dimarchos, and thank you for your time.